Hey you guys, what's up? I'm Ashley from heavenathome.org, and this is the Heaven at Home podcast, where my goal is to encourage you in your personal growth journey while being open, honest, and owning my story. We have faith-based conversations and tackle a bunch of different tough topics. Check out the description to follow me and learn more. Remember, you are fully known and deeply loved. Let's do this. Hey you guys. How are y'all doing? Today's episode podcast is going to be a bit more of like a listicle style. I literally just wanted to list the type of people you might want to speak into your life, people who possess like certain character traits that might bring value to areas where you're kind of needing wisdom, insight, understanding, expertise. I think when you're looking for people to give you advice, sometimes we have to go to different people for different things. But I think it's really cool when people are willing to offer us the kind of advice that we need. Like we might be looking for certain answers or, certain bits and pieces of wisdom in a specific area. And like sometimes the people we have around us, they give us the truth. I think we have to value that. But it's an exceptionally rare case, and it's a very rare gift to have someone in your life who encapsulates everything, like someone who is able to be everything. I don't think it's impossible. I just think it's very, very rare. So I kind of wanted to go into some of these categories and just share the kind of people that you might want to look for. The friends that you have in your circle, the acquaintances that you have access to at church or, things like that. Kind of look around and take inventory of the people you have around you in your life and kind of analyze, okay, who can I go to for this? Who can I go to for that? And who can I be for others? That's a really nice moment of self-reflection we can have there. But to me, this is definitely pushing me to expand my network in general. In the season, I've been a lot more intentional about like trying to maintain relationships, create community. People are very valuable. Their insights, their experiences, their wisdom, it's all very valuable. But at the end of the day, if all you have is Jesus, sometimes that's okay. And I want to recommend that you read the book of Proverbs. If you're looking for wisdom and understanding and you're trying to get advice and you don't know where to go or who to go to, or, you're not exactly sure if, the advice that you're getting is good, I think the Bible is the best resource that you have to get the advice that you need. So definitely recommend reading the book of Proverbs for yourself. But I also do have a blog post titled Wisdom from Proverbs that kind of has a simplified, bulleted list of all the advice that book provides. It's kind of laid out in a simple way. So if you want to check that out, you literally just have to write Wisdom from Proverbs on my website, heavenathome.org, and you'll find it very easy. It also includes a free PDF copy, so you can have access to that also. So again, these are the kinds of people that you should want to look for. Everyone, all people. We almost always want to go to people who give us what we want, right? But we don't always want to go to people who give us what we need. And so as we're going through these different categories, I want to challenge you to think about like who can I look for, or who can I invite into my life to be this kind of person for me? I don't want to forget to mention this at the end, but there are certain people in my life who are definitely like my go-tos. And sometimes they have a default way of interacting with me, a default way of listening to me and talking to me. So sometimes I do challenge them, and I challenge myself to have them show up for me in a different way. So like, for example, if I'm speaking to someone and they're not very religious, or they're not as devoted to Jesus as I am. And in a practical way, not a judgmental way, you guys. Sometimes I'll ask them, if they're familiar with my faith, to challenge me in that way, or to listen to me with those kinds of ears. Or if I find that I'm being a lot more emotional and I can't bring myself out of my emotional way of perceiving a situation, I'll ask them, hey, I'm going to tell you this problem I'm having. I already know that you empathize and you're sensitive, and I know that you understand. I need you to give me a practical solution because I literally can't think through this problem. So I want to challenge you to do that also. Like if you have, certain people in your life, ask them like, hey, would you be willing to show up for me in this way? Or like, hey, I know that you have experience doing this thing. I never really thought to ask you this before. I have, some peers about my age. I consider them to be exceptional mothers. And one of the things that stands out to me about some of the mothers that I've seen is just like how they foster their relationships with their kids, even in something as simple as like an evening routine after they get out of school. Like, what activities are you doing? What bedtime routine do you have? What foods are you giving them? Because they ultimately show me something that I've never seen, but it's just, one of the things I share a lot is like, okay, sometimes we know what not to do, but we don't know what to do. And so I think it's really cool. If someone's doing something, in an area where you yourself want to be better and grow, and don't be afraid to ask for people to show up for you in a certain way, because I could be going to people who are my peers, they're my age, they have the same years of experience as me, but they excel in a certain area. And I can be like, hey, I know we're friends and we're homies. You respect me, I respect you. You love the way I mother, I love the way you mother. How about you tell me what you're doing? Because you're doing amazing, stuff like that. Anyway. So the first category that I want to share is the expert. So someone who has a really deep knowledge, or, a very broad amount of experience, like in a certain area where you're looking for advice about. So like this could be like in finances, even in parenting, like I mentioned, or career, or even within a spiritual aspect, like someone who has really not just studied something, but also walked something out in a practical way. They give you reliable and detailed advice in areas where you might be lacking knowledge. And if they're willing to share their own mistakes, that's even more valuable because that ultimately helps you save time. So look for an expert in your life. All right. Another one is a challenger or a debater. I know all of us, sometimes we have a tendency to think that if someone challenges us or kind of plays like devil's advocate, that they're against us or attacking us or something like that. That's a really unhealthy perspective to have sometimes. But I think it's refreshing to have people in your life who think differently than you. It's like a very delicate relationship to foster. But I definitely think that it's worth it. So you want someone in your life who isn't afraid to ask you tough questions. You want someone who's not afraid to challenge you to express yourself in a certain way. You want someone who can kind of, how do I say this? Like, I want to say like healthy resistance. So, one of the ways that I actually got challenged and growing deeper in my conviction was with one of the, I want to say it's like a political topic. And I actually talked with two different people. And having a conversation with them, it challenged me in a healthy way because they thought opposite. But it challenged me to become more principled and more convicted in having my yes be yes and my no be no, and having more like awareness around why I think the way that I do. And I think when you engage in relationships like that, they push you to think more critically and they push you to grow. To me, it also pushed me to to be more principled with my conviction. Yeah. So another kind of person you want to invite into your life is someone who's encouraging. So someone who is able to kind of like lift you up and remind you that there's light at the end of the tunnel, that there's a purpose for your pain. Like when you're feeling unsure or overwhelmed or, you know, like just broken by whatever situation you might be facing, you want someone who reminds you that you can do this. Even more powerful if you have someone in your life who can remind you that you can do this with Jesus's help. You know, like when you're at your capacity, you have someone who is willing to fill in and make up the difference. So they're big on positivity. They're big on optimism. They're willing to encourage you and walk with you. And, you know, they're able to be there for you in the way that you need when it comes to like the emotional support aspect. Another person you'd want to look for is someone who can be a neutral observer. A very like popular example of this is someone who's almost taking on like a therapist or a mediator type role. So it's someone who isn't emotionally tied to the situation. So to find someone who's neutral is honestly very rare. To find someone who's unbiased in their advice and someone who can help you see a situation clearly for what it is without the emotional interference or the emotional undertone, like that is a really valuable thing to look for. So someone who's neutral, that's awesome, but also someone who's able to be observant. I think it's very rare also to find someone who's able to adequately and accurately observe. So yeah, I know if we're looking around and trying to take inventory of our own circle, it'd be hard to find someone who's neutral. I'll say that. So, therapists and mediators are definitely the kinds of person to go to, or if you happen to have like an interaction with a pastor who doesn't know too much about you on a personal level, they might be able to be more neutral. For example, when it comes to like marriage counseling or something like that. Another person you'd want to look for who might be able to speak into your life is someone who's a visionary. So someone who can think and see beyond the situation that you're facing. Like you want someone who can kind of see past the current problem and help you think bigger or see the more long-term possibilities. I know when I was going through my process, I did have people who would speak into my life, and they would say like, you know, you feel like this now, you won't feel like this forever. You're thinking like this now, you won't think like this forever. And I think even though I didn't like it at the time and I did reject a lot of their ideas, we need people in our lives who can challenge us to see beyond what we see. So that's an example of that. Okay, another one is you want a strategist. You want someone who's great at breaking things down, like breaking down big goals and big dreams, and they make everything into an actionable step to help you stay on track. So instead of just supporting what you're going to do, they help support you in how you're going to do it. And it's useful because instead of something being like a huge, overwhelming goal, like they break everything down into a manageable bite-sized piece to help you stay on track. Another person that you want to look for is an empath. This is someone who really and truly understands you and your emotions and your process, and they understand you in a healthy way. And I'd even go even further to say that an empath is able to separate the way that they would go about a situation, and they're able to be with you in your situation. I know a lot of times we have the ability to find a lot of common ground and compassion when we've been through something similar, but a true empath is able to understand the uniqueness of your situation, and they can still like give you emotional support, help you process your feelings. And that's something that's really necessary, especially if you're going through a healing or a personal growth journey. The next person you want to look for is an accountability partner. So someone who holds you to what you say, someone who holds you to your commitment and makes sure that you are staying aligned with your values. Like, I think it's really great when you have people in your life who can hold you to what you say and be like, hey, you said you were going to do this, so do it. Or even in a faith-based aspect, like we have people who share our faith, like having someone who's like, I know who you are and I know who God says you are, I think is like the best version of an accountability partner that you can get. This next one is the storyteller. So I'm sure some of you guys might know this, but Jesus was a storyteller. He was very famous for telling parables. And this is something that I've kind of just been discovering in my personal time with God. But there's something about being able to tell a story that makes the principle of what you're trying to say expand. In the context of the Bible, it makes the word eternal. But when you have someone in your life who's willing to share their own experiences with you, and they're able to give, the insight by looking into their lives, like that helps you expand your perspective. At times, it can help you know that you're not alone. If they can't, understand you specifically in the way that an empath would at the very end, you can relate by the context of the story that they're telling or the principle they might be sharing. It helps you expand your thinking, and you'd be surprised at the way that you can apply what you might be hearing. So I think storytellers are, they're very interesting. Very, very interesting. And what you might find is that if they're telling you a story about one thing, okay, yes, like it is going to be in a way that you understand. It might be relatable. But you might be able to draw from that bigger life lessons. The next kind of person you want to be able to speak into your life is someone who is a networker. So you want a networker, someone who knows the right people or has the right resources that can help you in what you might be trying to do. And I feel like there's a very practical way to do this without being a leech. I don't know how else to describe that, but me, within the context of career and professional development, I'm big on networking and relationship building. And I do tend to evaluate, okay, like who can I learn from? Who can I be mentored by? How could this, relationship possibly benefit me? Like, does this relationship align with my professional goals? I think there's a way to do that honestly and authentically. And so I'm very transparent about that. I think in different domains, though, the heart posture can get a little weird. Like, I think it's weird to get close to a pastor because you want to be, you want the influence that they have, or, you want I think there's a kind of unhealthy way to go about that, but I think within the context of professional development, it works. Especially if you're being forthcoming about that and saying, hey, I'd like to learn in this area. I'd like to be this, in this role in, 5 years or 10 years or something like that. That makes sense. But yeah, so tread that carefully, but you definitely do want people who can connect you with other resources. Another person you want to look for is what I would personally call like a counterweight or a counterbalance. So someone who is strong in an area where you're weak, someone who thinks opposite from you. Like, even if you guys have the same values, but ultimately think about things in different ways, I think that's very refreshing. It can be frustrating. Like, there's something about people that we really don't like others who think differently from us, but it is incredibly valuable. This kind of person can balance you out. So if you're emotional, they bring logic. If you're a dreamer, then they bring practicality. They bring reality. Like, they bring you back down to earth. You want people like that. I mean, you might not know that you want people like that, but you want people like that. Trust me. They help you see the other side of the coin. They give you like a perspective that you might miss. There's one conversation that I had with someone, and this person is, when I tell you, very principled and very devoted with their spiritual life and their relationship with God. And me, I consider myself the same, but also from like, but I guess not also, but instead from a more emotional aspect. I feel like engaging in a relationship with this person challenges me to love God with discipline, challenges me to love God with practicality, with what I do in a day. And I feel like vice versa, I challenge the other person to love God with their heart, to love God with their emotions and their vulnerabilities. And not to say that we do not possess what the other person has to some extent, but definitely like an area where we're weaker, they're stronger, and our default is not their default, kind of thing. That's useful in my opinion. And then this is, I guess, some of what more so what I look for. But you want someone in your life. If you are a Christian and you are a follower of Jesus and you consider yourself a disciple, and you're trying to do that genuinely, you want someone in your life who shares your faith and your core values, someone who lives by those values, and can give you like not just practical earthly wisdom, but also like deeper spiritual insight. Someone who is like walking alongside you, someone who can help you, guide you in the truth of the Word of God. They can give you practical advice. They don't hyper spiritualize everything, but you can almost feel the relief of not having to eat the flesh and spit out the bones type thing. I know if you're kind of more secular, you might not have understood what I just said, but basically, an obstacle that I've seen in some of my relationships is knowing that people understand my values but don't have the same values. And so when I'm getting advice from people, sometimes I have to stop. And this is even within the context of Christianity and church, but sometimes you still have to filter and say, okay, does this ultimately align with what I know God is saying in His Word? Does this align with the Bible? Does this align with what God is saying? And with someone who is a follower of Jesus, like also aligned with their belief in Jesus, you can have a little bit more of a reprieve in that area and kind of take things as they are there. Another kind of person you want to look for is an insider. So someone who really and truly knows you deeply. Like, they know your personality, they know your strengths, they know your struggles, and they can tailor their advice to fit who you are. This person, like, they know you. They know you. They know how to see you through unfamiliar situations because they're familiar with you. Yeah, I'm not trying to get too much into that, but when you can find someone, how do I say this? There's this kind of description in the Bible where people are thinking that, or how do I say this? A situation that I've come across often in my life is that people know me, or people think they know me. And so when they see me in situations, even in situations of struggle, they make these assumptions or judgments about my intentions and my character because they have walked me through different seasons of my life, or they've observed, you know? And I've seen that even though people know me, they don't know me in the way that they've never seen me. So, like, how do I say this? They know my actions in the past, and because of that, they think that they know my heart. But then when I'm in a different situation and, you know, all of a sudden they're seeing conflict or they're seeing me do something new, they don't ultimately know my heart in this new thing, you know? So I don't know if you've ever experienced a feeling like that. But to have someone who is truly like an insider, that is, I feel like it's a beautiful level of relational intimacy when, you know, you can navigate your decisions with that person in a way that's like authentic to you and your unique circumstances. Another person you want in your life is a ride or die. So someone who will unwaveringly be with you and have your back. You should be thinking of your spouse. But this is like ultimately like someone who's like always in your corner because they love you. Like as your person, like they encompass many of the other characteristics that we discussed like above, that we discussed in this episode. But the root of all the categories we mentioned is like love. Like everything is rooted in love. And this person is willing to speak into your life through all the unpredictable circumstances of life. Like they remind you that you're never alone. They offer both emotional and practical support when you need it. They're always there. And they're there because they love you. I think you need someone like that in your life. So yeah, a ride or die. It's not always only a spouse. You can have other people, but if you are married, your spouse should kind of, you know. Anyway, all right, moving on. The last person you want to speak into your life is what I would consider a master. Like they have mastered this. So you might think a pastor, you might think a teacher, but this person is like a role model in public and in private. They master different areas of life. So you might think like at home, at work, in ministry, in finance. They're wise and discerning, but they also live their life according to spiritual principles. They have the gifts of the Spirit, but they also have the fruit of the Spirit. And the hallmark of this kind of person isn't just their success, it's their authenticity and their complete dependence on God for all things. To me, that is the defining characteristic that sets this kind of person apart. When you're these kinds of people can show you what it looks like to do something right. They can show you what it looks like to always be a son or always be a daughter of God, no matter how advanced in years you get. And they encompass like a lot of the other characteristics to the other types that I shared, but they're not perfect. Like they depend on God perfectly, and they teach you to do the same. To me, that is what someone who has mastered life looks like, because in my mind, I'm thinking about the struggles of marriage. I'm thinking about how you're deciphering going through hardship or tragedy or, you know, anything like that. this person has mastered depending on God. And so if you have someone in your life who shows you that example and is successful and in their marriage and family and other areas, I think that's important and that's really beautiful. And I hope this helps you determine what to look for if you're trying to get advice, if you're trying to get wisdom. Take inventory, and I'll see you guys in the next one. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening. Feel free to DM me to send me your feedback. Check out the description below to follow me on social media. This podcast is listener supported. Don't forget to subscribe. Remember, you are fully known and deeply loved. I'll see you in the next one.